Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over a little bit about elevation training. Since I did climb Mount Whitney a few weeks ago, kind of what I did to be able to go to that elevation of climbing without any sort of issues. So just first off, to start off, my previous highest hike was 2.5 months before Whitney, and that hike was San Gornio, which was only 11,500 feet. And Mount Whitney is about 14,500 feet. So the difference is about 3,000 feet in elevation. We'll go over a little bit here on how that is significant. But that was my highest hike prior to that moment. So not a whole lot of altitude training for myself. So I was kind of going in fresh when I went on the hike. We did camp for the night. So I got there maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, or about 4 o'clock, I think. To the Whitney Portal campground, which is about 8,500 feet, I believe, or 8,000 feet, somewhere right around there. So I did get to sleep at that altitude just to acclimatize a little bit. But generally, when you're hiking, especially Mount Whitney in one day, it's a little bit better if you get to those heights, or at least get to do a training hike up to at least 14,000 feet, but I wasn't able to. So what I did is I incorporated like Wim Hof type breathing, or it's basically just hyperventilation. In different cultures, they've called it different things, but essentially it's hyperventilation breathing. I'll explain why that is beneficial, but I was able to climb to the top of Mount Whitney in a relatively good amount of time, so about 8 hours, and I didn't have any of the effects of, say, acute mountain sickness or AMS, which would be like nausea, vomiting, fatigue, shortness of breath, anything like that. I did have the normal fatigue and, getting short of breath while you're working really hard. Once I stopped, that all went away to take breaks. But just the normal fatigue from hiking, that many miles at that elevation is just the only thing I experienced, but nothing that I would consider acute mountain sickness or anything like that. So once we get into it here, what happens when you get above about 8,000 feet is that the pressure in the air will decrease. I have a few notes here written down, so if you see me looking down, I'm just kind of making sure I hit all my notes right. The pressure is going to decrease. The concentration stays the same. The concentration of oxygen in the air will be about 21%, but that pressure will change, and that will change how many molecules of oxygen we're actually able to inhale. So from about normal at sea level is about 760 millimeters of mercury. When you get about 12,000 feet, that's cut by about 40%, all the way down to 483 millimeters of mercury. And that's at 12,000 feet. So we're going another 2,500 feet higher than that. So you can see how it is much less. So what will happen when you start climbing those elevations, your breathing rate is going to increase to allow, or basically to accommodate the oxygen demands. And if your body is not able to reach those same oxygen demands that it would at sea level by increasing the breathing rate, that's where you can start to experience AMS. As well as when we start to increase our breathing, it decreases our CO2, which is an acid, so it makes us more alkaline or more basic in our body system, and you can go into what we call respiratory alkalosis, which is just meaning your pH is now becoming more basic. Normal pH in our body is about 7.35 to 7.45, so anything outside of those demands can also kind of lead to these AMS type symptoms. So what normally happens when you take time to acclimate, so if you take time, maybe hike up to a point of higher altitude, stay there for a while, what will happen, or what they believe to happen, elevation, acclimation is not fully understood in some forms, but what they believe to happen is that when your body adapts, your kidneys will excrete bicarbonate, which is so it's getting rid of bicarbonate, which is a base, so therefore it's going to offset the alkalosis by creating more acidity, by getting rid of a more alkaline in your body. So therefore you're able to breathe more, which will allow you to get the amount of oxygen you need without creating that respiratory alkalosis. So what Wim Hof does, which you can do prior to climbing as well as during your climb, especially during your climb, but I also did it leading up just before, right? You get into that hyperventilative state, and basically you start acclimating earlier. So it's almost as if, in my opinion, like you started acclimating way earlier by doing this a couple, weeks before. which is just good for your body overall in general. But also while you're doing the hike, it's almost as if you started to acclimate at the start of the hike versus once you started to get higher. So your body's kind of already used to it by the time you get to those higher elevations, and you've already kind of started to adapt, ideally. The hyperventilation also increases our oxygenation, which allows us to climb those feats. If you've seen any of Wim Hof's records, he's known for climbing very fast on these mountains that usually require a lot of time to acclimate, where he doesn't need to acclimate as much because of this type of breathing. So what I was doing is this hyperventilation type of breathing about every 15 minutes or so. And all that looks like is a deep breath in and then just kind of letting it go. So not blowing it out, but just kind of letting it go. So it'd be like, real easy to do while you're hiking. I found out, I've originally thought it'd be really difficult. It was actually really easy to do. It did help me feel a lot more oxygenated, give me a lot more kind of energy as I was hiking as well, which was awesome. But that's how kind of that works. The other alternatives that a lot of people do is they'll take Diamox, which is a drug that most people consider like a gold standard for climbing at high altitude. Generally for this though, you have to take it prior as well as kind of during, but you have to take it prior for it to have any of its effects. And how Diamox works is it's taken prior. It just forces your body to excrete bicarbonate. So kind of the same way that your body does adapt, but if you start early, it's going to start by excreting that bicarbonate, which is going to create more acidity in your blood like we talked about. So it believes there's too much carbon dioxide, so it's going to make your body, once again, breathe faster to get that acid, or what it believes to be that acidity, that carbon dioxide out of your body. So you end up breathing faster, which is going to increase the O2 as well. So you get that effects, as well as, same as before, you are kind of artificially acclimating by kind of starting those effects early on, a few days before, versus once you start to get that 8,000, 10,000 feet range. We had multiple people in our group that took Diamox, and they were fine. I was the only one, I think, that hadn't been to that high of elevation. I had the lowest amount of elevation in training, and I didn't take any Diamox. I just did this hyperventilation type of breathing consistently. Once we got about above 8,000 feet, rather than doing it every 15 minutes, I kind of did it almost just the whole way. I found it actually really simple to do, where I thought it was going to be really difficult, and that seemed to work great for me. We finished the hike, no problem. Everyone got down. So those are just some things that I like to look at. I'm big on not really taking medication, so if I could find a natural way to be able to climb those heights without doing that, then that's what I was going to do, and I wanted to kind of test it to see if it would work. For me, it worked. It might not work for everyone, but for me, it worked great. So if you're trying to climb at elevation, maybe consider this. Maybe consider taking Diamox and the breathing. It's really up to you guys, but if you like videos like this, just kind of informative information, make sure you guys like and subscribe, comment below on anything else that you would like to see, and we'll see you next time.